You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
This is episode 707 of the Dressage Radio Show, official podcast of the United States Dressage Federation on the Horse Radio Network, brought to you by Kentucky Performance Products. For this USDF episode, we will hear all about competition management from Heather Peterson, and then Natalie DiBerardinis, breeding director from Hilltop Farm, will tell us all about the Hanoverian horse and the North American Stallion testing. We've got a great trainer tip from Megan McIsaac. This is Reese Koffler-Stanfield from Loxahatchee, Florida.
And this is Philip Parks from Rockwood, Ontario, and you're listening to the Dressage Radio Show.
Hi,
Well,
Phil.
this week I'm going to have to apologize for my speech impediment. I had a crown fall out, which is my front tooth. And now I have a hole, a gap in my teeth, hopefully getting fixed pretty soon. But yeah, that's where we're at with that.
Everybody, I told Phil he's being very sensitive because I can't really hear it, but we want to be sensitive if you're worried about it. So thanks for telling us. But how was your week?
Well, that was kind of crummy. So overall, not bad, but not good either. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, it's been so hot here in Wellington. We've been really busy, but it's hot for sure. So I get it.
Did you get to Friday Night Lights?
Yes, I went to Friday Night Lights, and it was a little dramatic, right? So that was the kind of after Adrian Lyle withdrew from the World Cup standings because Salvino was injured. That did open up a lot of spots, right? So there were 3 North American League spots available. Stefan Peters had one, and then it's actually Alice Tarjan and Anna Buffini who are going to the World Cup, which is super fun. They're all people we've had on the podcast. And we're excited, but there was some drama because Sarah Tubman and First Apple have also highly contested that spot as well. So there was a bit of drama going on. Everybody had a very good ride, but it was fun to be there and to kind of have that kind of the Omaha feel. Phil and I aren't going to be able to go this year to the World Cup, so we'll be definitely watching it. We're going to have a watch party for sure, but very, very similar vibe. You had some Morgan, one of the French riders. A lot of the riders that we saw that night will be going to World Cup. So it had a pretty good feeling. It was really exciting. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. We're coming up on the 5-star, which I think is next week, actually. That's coming up. So that's always exciting to have that. So yeah, it was crazy. Season's kind of starting to wind down a little bit here. At least we feel it. You know, it's like, oh, we have 3 weeks left. Oh, we need to get together with these people. And in my case, I'm like, oh, I really need to train hard for the next 3 weeks. But it's been a lot of fun. It has actually been a really hot season. I keep saying that, but it's been over 90 every day. But really, really fun, really, really good. And yeah, I've made strides with all my horses. I had lessons today with my trainer, Scott Hassler. So that was super fun, just pushing through a bunch of stuff. So good breakthroughs. So it's just been a lot of fun. And this year I have not had the pressure to show, which is kind of nice. Sometimes that pressure is good. And then other times it's a lot. So yeah, that's what's been going on.
All right. Well, I guess it's going to be, what, two more weeks?
Yeah.
I fly down on a Thursday into Fort Lauderdale, and I'm looking forward to hot weather. I do not want to, fly down to Florida and for there to be a change in the weather. So just cross your fingers for me, and yeah, and then I'll see you.
I love it. Well, we're looking forward to it, but we're going to get to the show. It's fantastic. We've got a break from Kentucky Performance Products, and we're coming back with Heather Peterson.
This Nutrition Minute is brought to you by Kentucky Performance Products, the company that simplifies your search for research-proven nutritional supplements at kppusa.com.
Did you know that easy keepers and horses on restricted diets are often at risk for vitamin and mineral deficiencies? Most easy keepers are maintained on hay, and some get a few handfuls of grain a day, and most of these horses get little to no green grass. Diets that don't include significant levels of green grass or recommended amounts of fortified concentrates just don't supply enough vitamins and minerals. Many horse folks don't realize that hay alone, even high-quality green hay, is not an adequate source of many vitamins. For example, when grass is cut and dried for hay, the vitamins quickly lose their potency. 70% of the vitamin E found in grass is lost in the first week after it is cut for hay. One way to ensure that your special needs horse is getting all the vitamins and minerals he needs is to add a vitamin and mineral supplement to his diet. A well-balanced supplement will provide the nutrients your horse requires without adding unwanted calories, starches, and sugars. Microphase, made by Kentucky Performance Products, is a vitamin and trace mineral supplement that bridges the gap in your feeding program. With Microphase, your horse receives adequate and balanced vitamin and mineral nutrition without unwanted calories or other ingredients. The minerals in Microphase have been chelated, a process that protects minerals during digestion and increases their absorption in the intestine. Microphase provides vitamins such as vitamin E in a natural form, so your horse receives optimal results from this supplement.
This Nutritional Minute has been brought to you by Kentucky Performance Products. You can find all of their terrific products at kppusa.com.
Founded in 1973, the United States Dressage Federation has become the largest organization to represent a single Olympic equestrian discipline. At nearly 30,000 members strong, USDF is your connection to dressage education, competition, and achievement. Visit usdf.org to learn more about USDF education, competition and award programs, and to shop our online store. Again, that's usdf.org, your online destination for dressage.
Well, tonight we have found a topic, Phil, that we don't talk about very often, and we've never in 10 years had a show manager. So Heather Peterson, she is an FEI steward, a USDF silver medalist, a large RTD, and she is a manager of schooling shows to CDIs and some horse trials. Heather, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me. Looking forward to being here. It's great.
Yeah, we're thrilled because, again, we were chatting and I said to Phil, I'm like, we have never, I think in 10 years, had a show manager on, a professional show manager. So we wanted you to talk to us, like, what do you do? And what are some pet peeves? So we'll let you get started.
All right. Well, what we do is we put it all together, I have to say. I think the biggest thing is just organizing the chaos, making sure that the facility is in place and we've got stabling ready and the rings are set up and ready to go. And then obviously the background, organizing the entries, scheduling the show, putting it out, hiring the judges.
Yeah. You better be friends with your show manager to say.
That's right. No. And it's hard. I mean, because I'll tell you, some competitors like certain judges, others like different judges, and it's trying to find a good mix of officials that people respect and provide good scores, good comments. We are constantly looking and talking to each other throughout the country and kind of evaluating the officials. I mean, I hate to say that, but that's kind of the boat that we're in. We're customer service. And if our customers don't necessarily like an official, they won't come. So we definitely, it's like a restaurant. You don't provide a good steak, you're not going to have these people coming back. So we have to provide a good product, whether it's excellent footing and good stabling. But if that doesn't have a judge that gives out fair comments and fair scores for what they see, then, that's a huge part of it too. So that would probably be one of the hardest things. You talk about pet peeves, but I'll just say from the hardest standpoint is trying to find a good combination of licensed officials that works well for the needs of each show. That's super, super difficult in the show atmospheres.
That would make sense because, again, we don't think about that. And I will say, coming from Kentucky, it was not really an option to sort of, do a judge shop in a way, because we had certain shows that we could do that we could get to. You know, obviously here in Florida, you can sometimes look at the judges and change your plan. I think a lot of people do that depending on where you live in the country. But sometimes, like, I mean, my mom's like, you're showing at the Kentucky Horse Park whenever there's a horse show because we live 15 minutes from there. You know, there was not an option.
And I'm in Colorado. We have so few shows sometimes. I mean, I run shows in other parts of the country, Virginia and things too, but in Colorado, we have so few good venues and so few good showgrounds that sometimes it's who you can get who's available, and everybody comes anyways because there's wait lists for the shows. But we try, especially when we're looking at the level 3 competitions, which are like your junior young riders, your young horse, your developing horse, your small tour, large tour qualifiers. We try and get a fair panel who's consistent. You know, you want 2 judges that kind of match. You don't want one that's going to be kind of Mrs. Claus and one that's going to kind of be the Grinch, because it makes it really uncomfortable for the competitors because they get such varying scores. And that's not fair to them either. So, you know, you hope that we have one central standard, and I would say for the most part we do, but it still comes into play when we look at how we kind of match people up and put them at the shows.
I love that. I love that. So what are some pet peeves you have as a manager?
Please don't check in for your test 30 minutes before you ride and be missing all of your paperwork, because that really makes life difficult. Because we know you have to go warm up, but we also have liability. And so it's making sure your entry forms are signed and that you actually have a Coggins, and maybe you did vaccinate your horse within the last 6 months. That's a big pet peeve. Politeness
in general, then.
Yeah.
Correct.
Knowing what you need to compete and having it all kind of done.
Yep. Ahead of
pre-show, right? Yeah, not just pre.
And we're here. The show secretary and the show manager are happy. I will say 99.9% of the time will help you ahead of time. Like if you don't know what you need and you drop us an email or shoot us a text, we're going to be right there to help you with it and tell you what's missing, or, you know, if you need to go renew a membership or do your safe sport or what you need to have, we'll be there ahead of time. We'd love to help you ahead of time so that we don't have to help you when you're scrambling to put a foot in the store.
Ahead of time. That's great. Yeah.
Totally. I think another big pet peeve is politeness. And that is both to our volunteers and our staff. If you're working in like Kentucky or Colorado, for the most part, all of our people are volunteers. If you're down here, even in Wellington or in California, and perhaps they're paid staff, they still deserve respect for the jobs that they do. But we can't get people to come back, especially as volunteers, if the competitors aren't very nice to them. So I'm super big on politeness, and I think that that's a very big part of show etiquette.
I think that's just a big part of being a human being.
Yes.
But it's forgotten.
Yes.
It's forgotten when they're nervous, and they're nervous.
Yeah, I
and
mean,
we
there's a lot of stress around competing, and just a quick reminder to the volunteer or the paid staff are humans too, and they make mistakes, and it's okay, right? You're going to survive, and
absolutely.
Nobody's motivated to screw up your day or not give you a good experience. That's for sure.
Totally. And we understand if you're snippy before your ride, but once you do your final halt down center line and you're coming out of the ring, a little quick thank you so much for being here goes a long way to cover up when you were snippy before you went down center line.
Yes.
We totally get
100%.
it. Yeah.
Or just a quick
100%.
apology, like, I'm sorry if I was short, or, it's something like that. I mean, that's easy to do. And I mean, it's also easy to be stressed out, but just an acknowledgement that maybe, that wasn't you at your best moment.
Exactly.
I think
fair.
That's
and we see that all the time. Other major things, making sure you put your name and your phone number on your stall card. So if we are checking your horses during the night, we can get hold of you if something doesn't look right.
Yes.
Super
super
important.
Yeah, that happens all the time. I'm like, how do you not remember that? Like, absolutely. And okay, I got another one. And I would love this to be mandatory. Night check.
Let's hear it.
Night check.
Night
Please
check.
pay for the night check. Like if
Not
there's
all
night check
shows
available,
offer it.
I know, but if it's offered, will you please pay for it? Well, because I feel badly because the night check people are going to have to, they're going to call anyways if there's a problem.
They will.
And and then if there's not a name on the card, then they've got to call the show manager, and then the show manager's got to call you and wake you up and And I'm sure it's the people that don't pay for the service. So, I'm sorry.
Because if they pay for this service, the night check already knows their contact information. So you're right. It's the ones who don't pay for the service that the night check has to call and scramble to find the information for.
Yeah, pet peeve. Sorry, there's one.
Big pet peeve. Dogs. My next one is dogs. I love your dogs. Please bring your dogs to the show if they're allowed, but don't leave them in your car. Try not to leave them in your trailer. Please don't let them run around the barns loose. It's
put them on a leash.
Yeah.
Put them on a leash. Yeah.
And truly, I'm a huge dog fan. I love dogs, but I don't see a lot of dogs in the middle of August in Kentucky that are really loving the experience of being at the horse show. It's
absolutely
hot. It's miserable. Yeah.
And having a dog running around on a leash while you're trying to toss somebody on a horse that's like 4 years old or 5 years old isn't always the safest situation either.
No.
So sometimes it's best to just maybe leave them in the air conditioning at home.
I feel you. Preach, sister. I love it. What else? What else you got for pet peeve?
Let's see. What else? Good question. I try and be pretty lenient. I'm a little bit more laid back than some. But like aisleways, if you're at a horse show, it's kind of polite to keep the aisleway at least clear enough that other people can open their stall doors or walk a horse down the stall aisle too, especially when we're in tent stablings that have smaller, more narrow aisleways. It is not that much more to get a tack stall so that you don't have to have everything piled up outside of your stall door. And maybe when you see the stabling charts and you didn't get a tack stall, you can talk to the people around you and offer to help pay for a corner of a tack stall so that narrow aisleways aren't blocked by all of the belongings.
I love that one. I didn't even think about that one, but yes, that is a huge deal. That happens a lot, like in the CDI barns and stuff here, where I know it's expensive, but man, does it make a big difference if you just, like you said, split it with your neighbor or something. But, having things out, it's so hard.
Find out if another friend is showing and just say, hey, let's stable together, put it on our stabling request and share a tack stall. It would make things just a lot easier for everybody involved.
I love it. And Heather, don't you think right now, we're obviously here in Florida, but a lot of people are up north, and this is a great time to make sure your memberships are accurate.
Memberships are current, and the biggest one is Safe Sport. And obviously this year, I'm not sure a lot of people know, but the non-member fee policy for U.S. Equestrian has changed. So you're now only allowed to buy one show pass, which is what they call their non-member fee, per year. And that means at one show only, and otherwise you have to join. So if you had an owner that was just paying the non-member fees all year, or you have a junior young rider who was paying the non-member fees just to try a couple shows, now it's time to just have them join, because they won't let you do more than one show. Even if there's 2 shows in one weekend, you can only do one day as a non-member, and then you have to join. Another big change is that parents can no longer sign the entry blank as trainer without being a member. All people who sign the entry blank as trainer or coach must be U.S. Equestrian members.
That's a good one. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And Safe Sport this year, took a while. Or I don't know, maybe it was the cycle I was in. Or maybe it's
I'm
for
in
everybody.
The same cycle then.
It
was like a 2-hour deal.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were in the same cycle I was. And it be ready. Block out 2.5 hours.
Set aside an evening. Yeah.
100%. I did it.
And for those of you doing regional championships, start now. Remember the deadlines to change regions. If you're in like 2, 4, 3, 1, where all of the different regions are so close together and you sometimes shop, don't forget that the fees start going up July 1st. So now's a good time to kind of start looking at your competition season and seeing where you might go at the end if you want to aim for regional championships.
See, I need to talk to Heather more often. I'm like, oh, I should check that out. Thank you, Heather. I just made a note to myself. No, I love it.
And NAYC deadline is coming in March, the first deadline for $50, and then it goes up after that to $100 and then $300, I think.
Significantly. So, yeah, significantly. Like, hit that first one. I think it's the same for high performance as well. Hit those deadlines. So now's the time to be looking at these things because they're coming up, and
you can
fast.
save a bit of money. By being ultra prepared,
What?
Financial
Absolutely.
incentives. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and having your safe sport done before the night of the first horse show makes things a lot easier, a lot less stressful, especially if you're riding for an owner or a sponsor, making sure that they have their safe sports done as well. Because that often is what catches my riders.
The modules for owners' riders have just come in last year, and now it's getting more serious. So up here in Canada, do your safe sport modules.
Yes.
Get them out of the way.
You have it in Canada as well?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's kind of an
our riders always complain.
Well, you guys were first in implementing, those module things, and then it's kind of floated up north the way things do anyway. So, get it done.
Well, the head of Equine Canada was the manager of the Colorado Horse Park when all of the safe sport went implemented, Meg. So we've known Meg a long time.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
I love it. Well, Heather, thank you so much. This was all phenomenal information. Like I said, I made some notes myself. How can our listeners find you online if they have any questions? Or, you're amazing at any of these, safe sport questions, et cetera. How could they find you?
They can reach out by email. It probably is the best bet. My email is slush, like the snowy rain mixture, not like the toilet, slush@drgw.net.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Heather.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
We're the Healthy Critters crew. I'm Tigger.
I'm Patty.
And I'm Coach Jen.
If you're a horse lover, dog lover, cat lover, llama lover, chicken lover, parrot lover, paw and hooves and feathers lover, Healthy Critters is for you. We have fascinating guests, nutrition tips, information on various critters, and the only talking Pomeranian dog on the radio.
Hello, everyone.
Join us for our bi-monthly laughter-filled romps on HRN.
Brought to you by BioStar US.
Well, tonight we are really excited to have Natalie DiBerardinis, the new president of the American Hanoverian Society, breeding director at Hilltop Farm, and we're going to talk stallion and breeding history. Natalie, welcome back to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Reese. Happy to be here.
Well, we loved talking to you last time, and we wanted to, it is springtime, which is crazy, and people may be starting to think about stallions. So we wanted to talk a little bit about history of warm bloods, and also going into stallion testing. You were saying stuff before we get online that, that I didn't even know. I'm not that big into the breeding. And so, so why don't you get started and talk to us a little bit about kind of warm blood history and breeding, et cetera. So I'm going to turn the mic to you.
All right. The history of sport horse breeding, of warm blood breeding, really centers back in Europe, of course. And the goal has shifted, through time. A lot of it was initially agricultural based. And I think there's a little misconception, though. It wasn't that warm bloods come from draft horses, but they were horses that were working horses, part of the farm, part of the family life. They may have worked in the fields and then been ridden on the weekends and, were a full part of the family, but it wasn't draft horses as we think sometimes, or we hear common misconceptions on. But then after the war years, that changed and agriculture shifted and it became more sport focused and driven. And that has certainly changed the warm bloods into the modern sport horses we have today.
Yeah, and I think this is really interesting for me. I have the book, like The Modern Warm Blood, and it has all of the bloodlines and everything into it. But it was interesting to me that before the advent of AI, your local area in Germany or or Holland or France would have your set of stallions, and that's who you would breed to.
So much was set up on a regional basis, right?
Yes.
Your local breeding community, your local clubs, the overall breeding direction was, in a lot of cases, government run. And so stallions were put out to different stations in different regions where they felt they would complement the local mare base. And that gave a real structure to breeding. And when we talk about some of the old bloodlines and we see some of the nicks that were so proven over time, like Donnerhall on Pick Booba, we see that time after time after time. And some of that centered around the fact that those stallions were, at the same facility. They were, local to each other. And so the breeders within that population would, of course, use the local stallions. And we got a much more kind of directed by the breed registries approach to breeding than perhaps it is today.
Yeah, and a real more diverse set of bloodlines and stallions because of that, right? And now, like, you can, I was just going to say, like, through AI, you can breed your mare in America with all kinds of, like, the choices is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's true, and it's changed for not only the breeders. The whole industry has become globalized. We went from very regional based, those very pockets of the horses, your breeder, trainer connections were localized. The registries were all set up as localized. You can find great old maps of all of the different registries, like in Germany, for instance, and they were set up based on and named kind of to the geographic region. So you can see, like, all the Holstein horses were originally in northern Germany and Holstein. And nowadays, the registries have, as breeding has gone globalized, the registries have had to adapt in a very different structure as well. We've seen kind of the smaller registries disappear or get merged with some of the larger registries. And then we've seen connections with those kind of homeland registries all across the world. Here in North America, we have, of course, Hanoverian and Oldenburg and Dutch warmbloods, that all of those organizations have ties to their original homeland registries as well.
And the thing that I've noticed, is that particularly the Hanoverian, the way that they name them is on the stallion side. The sires all have the same
first letter of the same name,
letter,
and
right.
And that's gotten actually more complicated and less clear as we've started to utilize stallions from different breeding populations more and more. It used to be very easy to look at, say, like the D line and know, okay, this is going to go back to Donnerhall. But nowadays, when we see, for instance, a lot of Dutch blood being used in Germany and vice versa, and the Dutch have a very different naming convention. They go off of a letter for each specific year. So, for instance, now the stallion Desperado, who's a Dutch stallion that Emily Skoltens rides, he's used in breeding populations around the world, but he's also approved Hanoverian, even though he's Dutch. But so his offspring now get named with the letter D as well. So it's becoming, we're losing a little, as the bloodlines have merged through the different registries, we're losing a little of that naming convention. It's not quite as crystal clear as it used to be, but I prefer that trend of staying with the sire's letter. I think it gives us a little bit of a map, as it were, to the pedigree.
Right. Natalie, it's part of it, right? From that area of Europe, it's not very big, right? So that's also, I think, geographically, as you start looking at moving horses, between the Netherlands and Germany, it's, they could be 20 minutes away from each other. Does that help with kind of genetic diversity in general with the warm blood breeding?
Actually, that's the kind of advent of AI has actually, I think, hurt us in terms of genetic diversity because, as you were mentioning, it opens up stallions anywhere. It is very easy within Europe to get cooled semen from different countries. And, of course, here in North America or down in Australia, we can utilize frozen semen from around the world. And what that has tended to do is allow breeders, or not encourage breeders, but it has allowed breeders to go to very strongly to kind of the popular flavor of the month or of the year. And we're seeing more swings and more consolidation in the bloodlines instead of less. Because the stud books used to have it where they would station the stallions when you weren't dealing with AI, where they were stationing the stallions. They could control that a little bit more and think, okay, we're getting too much of this bloodline, or we need to bring in something fresh. And they could manage that by essentially choosing where those stallions were stationed throughout the country. But now it's up to the breeder to pick anywhere in the roll. It's like open the catalog and pick which stallion you want. And so we're seeing certain lines being used more heavily, or certain stallions being used very heavily for a couple of years. And that is actually skewing the bloodline diversity. It's becoming a big problem. And I think some of the registries are recognizing it more than others, but some are even starting to publish an inbreeding coefficient of where that stallion relates to their general population, to try and encourage breeders to draw some focus to that and start to use some different lines.
Yeah, that's really interesting for sure. And because I went to Germany with students, I actually saw this, and I saw the state stud, and I learned a lot about how they controlled the bloodlines and that type of thing. It was really, really fascinating. But let's transition to America now, because I think that's a huge challenge, right, for breeders as they're looking towards stallions now. You're probably, if you're a breeder, looking now or have already looked recently. But talk to us a little bit about the stallion testing here in America and how that works, kind of the whole system.
Sure. I'll skim into the stallion test in just a moment, but in terms of unique challenges, I think, in North America for our breeders, we can't escape the geography issue. It is just such a vast country that the availability of going to see stallions, see a lot of different foals by one stallion, it gets magnified. It's a real challenge for our breeders. And kind of along those lines, so in the stallion testing process, as you probably know, there's, with any of the warm blood registries, Hanoverian, Oldenburg, Dutch, Holstein, or whatever, there are approval processes for the parents to basically be entered into the breeding stud book. So, for instance, here in America, if you bred a registered Morgan horse to a registered Morgan horse, you can register the foal as a Morgan, right? But you can have a registered Hanoverian breed it to another registered Hanoverian, and it doesn't necessarily get Hanoverian papers unless both its parents have been approved for breeding. And for the stallions, the first step in that process is the licensing, which in Europe is happening. They've shifted the timeline a little. It now happens very, very late in the 2-year-old year. Some may be moving to the early in the 3-year-old year for the licensings. And that's the point where they're seeing the stallions, they're judging, they're looking at pedigrees, they are looking at conformation, movement. And there has been a shift towards a much more specialized direction. As we were talking, the original warm blood sport horse was a all-around, all-purpose sort of horse. And nowadays it's very specialized into dressage or jumping or eventing breeding. Like we're seeing a little crossover on lines, but you've got breeders that have a very clear path, and the licensing and processes have actually changed for each of those different stallions. So first step is licensing. And here in this country, we obviously produce way less stallions. In any given year, between all of the registries, I would guess there's probably 30 stallions that get approved in the whole country. That may be a little high. Some of them get approved for multiple registries, but so they do the licensing here in this country a little later. Most of the registries, they have to be at least 3 and be seen under saddle for the first time. And then they still are focusing primarily on conformation and movement, but they want to see a little rideability. And then the second stage for a stallion to keep their breeding license is to do a stallion test or a performance test. And this dates back to long history back in Europe, where the state studs used to put on these stallion tests. And a long time ago, they used to be 300 days. And then eventually they narrowed those down to 100 days. And then they went to 70 and then 50. And the current model, it has changed to discipline specific. You either select dressage or jumper. And it's 3 consecutive years in Germany. So the stallions have to be seen at a aptitude test as a 3-year-old in order to breed that year. Then they have to come back as a 4-year-old again for a 3-day test, and again as a 5-year-old. And here, so we used to run a 70-day test here in this country, but it was always a tough test to fill to find enough stallions, and they had to do jumping under saddle and free jumping and cross country. And the way that test was done was on a bell curve, so you had to have at least 12 to 15 stallions to basically make the math work, to make the test run, right? And when they switched to the 3-day format in Germany, so that was in 2016 that they switched to that, and we started talking about this was a much more appealing format for here in this country because it's not based on a bell curve, so you could run it on a smaller number of stallions. And the stallions come prepared by their own trainer, their own regular rider, so you don't have to have a full testing staff and people taking care of stallions and a training director that's leading it for 70 days, right? It's a much simpler test to run.
And a farm with enough stalls and space to make that happen.
Exactly. But it's a much, you don't need a cross country course suddenly, and you don't have to basically take over full control of those stallions for that time period. So it opened up a lot of options. So we started talking late in 2016, early 2017 of how do we get this to happen? Because at that point, we hadn't had a 70-day test for a few years. And so the only way stallions could get approved, their full approval at that point, was going through sport, which is a totally valid option. But for dressage horses, it's scoring in the 60s at Pre-St. George. So they've at least got to be 7 years old to be hitting that marker. So from their licensing at maybe 3, you're going to have a lot of years where suddenly you're not able to breed if you have to wait until you have your Pre-St. George scores. So the registries actually all got together, and it was primarily Hanoverian, the American Hanoverian office, the Hanoverian Verband in Germany, and the Oldenburg Verband that got together and formed an LLC. And we kind of all just said, let's make this happen. And we started talking with the German FN, who administers the tests in Germany, on how we could replicate this format here, what differences we could do that kind of fit geography and the timeline for stallions. And it's been a fantastic endeavor. I mean, it just has been. We went from 9 stallions our first year in 2017 to 28 stallions the last 2 years. And we're able to run an East Coast test, which happens here at Hilltop, and then a West Coast test that happens at Polyrich Farm in Solvang. And it's still a long distance for a lot of stallions. We have stallions that travel from Florida to Maryland or Canada, Ontario to Maryland. We've had British Columbia go down to California. Like, they're still traveling a lot of distance. We can't avoid that in this country, unfortunately, but it's far better than everybody having to go to one location, which is what used to have to happen with the 70-day. The other thing with the test is it's discipline specific. They either go the dressage route or the jumper route. And then they also have different testing based on their age. And it is limited to 4, 5, and 6-year-olds. In Germany, they do it at 4 and 5, but they let us do an exception here to include 6, since we see stallions that kind of are developed a little slower sometimes over here. So stallions have to do 2 years of the test to complete their lifetime approval. That was probably more than
so
you
they
ever
can
wanted
be
to know about stallion testing.
Yeah, that's great. So they can be lifetime approved without anyone seeing the foals. So I think that's a difference in Germany. Like they have to have a certain number of foals be inspected. Is that correct?
So they used to, that's true. That used to be a rule. It is no longer a rule. And all of the registries, now the Dutch still have that in place. I think they have been one of the strongest on you have to present at least 10 foals. They try in that first year. But there's no longer that rule in terms of Germany, and at least for the registries I know best over there. And I think part of that has also come from bigger swings in how many mares the average stallion gets. You know, we all think of the very popular stallions out there, but the statistic, and this is actually a fairly old statistic, so I'm guessing it's even worse nowadays, was the average stallion in Germany got 16 mares, and the average stallion in the U.S. got 6 or less each year.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, now, of course, there are stallions that are breeding hundreds of mares a year in Germany, or over here, we may see a stallion breeding, 50 to 100, slightly over 100. Those are pretty unusual, though, especially over here. And part of that's it's just there's so many options between cooled and frozen.
And you guys, when you do the testing over here, you have somebody from Germany coming to I guess they give their 2 cents, the
testing commission is set up of 2 judges that are approved by the FN. And historically, it's been judges that they're judging the German sport tests as well. And then 2 what they call discipline experts, 1 for dressage and 1 for jumping. And I love that particular position because I look at them as sort of the conduit between the judges and the riders. And it's so throughout all of the 3 days, the riders are getting feedback from that discipline expert on, it's not a training session, but a little, at the end of their ride, it might be, okay, next time tomorrow or your next ride today, we want to see a little more of this or try a little bit less of that. And, everybody wants to see the horses succeed, and it's set up on a really open dialogue between everybody. So the discipline experts are sort of in the middle there. And then there are also 2 guest riders, 1 for dressage and 1 for jumping, that on the 3rd day of the testing, they ride the stallions, and their ride really factors into the rideability score. It's not the only piece that goes into that, but definitely factors into the rideability score. And for the dressage stallions, their test portion is the same as the young horse test we use here in this country, the 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, and 6-year-olds. And we've seen a very strong correlation between the stallions that have been out showing all season and what their scores are running. You can bank on that's how their scores usually run at the test. I mean, yes, every horse can have a great day and a bad day, right? But usually it's been very consistent. So.
Wow, Natalie, this is so cool. When is the testing, and when can you find information out about either how to go or how it ended?
Yeah, so test dates for this year have actually just been released. It's going to be October 6th through the 8th in California, and then it will be October 10th through the 12th here in Maryland. The new website, which I'm still rebuilding out some elements, we just changed it over this week, is stallionsporttest.com. So you can find more on the format there, the rules. We're just getting the updated, for instance, jumper courses for this year that we'll be posting online, things like that. But it's got some of the past test results that you can see online also. And we've seen a real growth and interest here from stallion owners that are more performance-based owners, that some of the stallions that are coming actually haven't entered the breeding population yet, which is sort of a shame. There's some really lovely ones that we'd like to see breeding, but the owners are seeing the value in getting the approval status early for their stallions. And I think because they come with their own trainers, their own care people, there's less risk, right? And there's more of a comfort level and acceptance of it. So that's been an interesting piece of seeing how well the performance world has kind of embraced the new format, because the old format was, honestly, it was terrifying. No matter how much you trusted the facility they were going to, the thought of giving up your stallion for 70 days was a horrible one.
Yeah.
I can't imagine. It just makes me twitch. Like, no way.
When Credit went, one of our stallions, he went as a 4-year-old, and we literally went from Maryland to Chicago. He was second at the 4-year-old championships that year. And then we drove on to Oklahoma, and actually Hemingway was with him, who won the championships. And we had to then turn over the top 2 4-year-olds and say, okay, they're going to go jump and they're going to go do things. And it's terrifying. So, and they did a great job with the horses. It wasn't anything against the facility or anything. It's just the idea of
but still
letting them out of our control is no good.
Yeah, it's no good. And Credit it's turned out to be an incredible horse and a CDI Grand Prix horse and a wonderful horse. But that literally makes me itchy in nerves. I can't even imagine. But Natalie, how can our listeners, if they have more sport horse questions, how can they touch base with you about the program or about the Hanoverian Society, etc.?
Sure. Yeah. So for the Stallion test, easy place to go to is stallionsporttest.com. Those emails do come into me. We at Hilltop, myself and Holly, we've been involved in the testing. We help with all basically the admin stuff. We help run the admin stuff. It's still, very much a volunteer-based organization there. But those
you do a lot of that, girl. Yeah, you do a lot.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I do a little bit of volunteering, but I am totally open to people calling. We get a lot of stallion questions. We deal with stallions all the time. We've presented probably more stallions in this country than anyone else of varying ages, everything from retired performance horses just starting to breed to, 3-year-olds just launching their career. So I'm always happy to chat with people on kind of the stallion route, because there's some different paths too. You can kind of do hybrid models of 1 year of the sport test and 1 year of young horse championships and things like that. But yeah, always happy to chat with people. They can reach me through the Hilltop contact or through the Stallion Sport Test contact. And we also have links to all of the registries on there, because each registry on the Stallion Test site, because each registry has slight variances on what bloodlines they're eligible for, what requirements they may have for stallions to do prior to a licensing versus after a licensing. Like, can they do x-rays after instead of before? How many years of the sport test they do. The majority of the registries require 2, but there is 1 or 2 registries that will only require 1 year. The ponies only have to do 1 year. So there are some variations in there too. Yeah, and then in terms of Hanoverian and Oldenburg, the Hanoverian office is luckily fully staffed with 3 great full-time people that are always available, but I'm, of course, reachable through any of the above options and happy to talk to.
Well, Natalie, thank you so much. This was so cool. It's just fun to learn the history and it's just a fascinating discussion. So thank you so much for your time tonight.
All for encouraging breeding, and we can do a whole other one on breeding mares and emphasizing more sport mares. And there's tons of ways to go, but it's something we really need to keep growing in this country. So thank you for helping with that.
Well, for this week's trainer tip, we have Megan McIsaac, FEI rider and trainer. Megan, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thank you for inviting me.
Well, we always love when you stop by. We laugh so much. We finally have to get it on the tape. So we're like, we got to get going.
I know.
Here. We love it.
Stop talking nonsense and let's get something that's recordable.
But you're in California training with your mentor, Kathleen Rain. And what we asked you, we're like, Megan, give us a tip that you've been working on. So I'm going to hand the mic to you.
All right. My tip for the day is keep it short and sweet. Get in to get out. So, I get pretty exuberant with the flying lead changes, especially the ones. And so, the tip is, we usually start with a line of 3s, then we start with a line of 2s, and then we go to the 1s. And right now, because I'm new to this horse and just kind of getting his feel, we do 6 1s. I nail the 1s, we're done. So when you're first starting out with a new horse, or even if you know a horse for a long time, get in to get out. That's my trainer tip.
I love it. But that's
Well-
so true. Like, for example, that was kind of I did a lot of that today because it's quite hot in Wellington right now. I mean, it's hot. It was in the 90s and not a lot of breeze.
Oh.
It was really hot. Yeah, it was hot. And, I think on days like that as well, like if the horses are good, they get to come back. You come out of the gate and you think, okay, what is my goal for this horse? Right. And for example, I was riding one of the owners is on vacation. So I had 4 of our horses. So each horse, I had a very specific plan on what I wanted to work on. Right. And if I got that right away, one horse I was working on self-carriage, right? He came out, we had 20 minutes and he was great. Broke a sweat. I was sweating. We were all sweating. And he went back. He was great. There was nothing more I could ask the horse to do. He did what I wanted. And I think specifically on changes, and I'm saying this not for a friend this week, I got some ones. I was so excited. I went back and did another line. Yeah, but I did another line and, we made some mistakes. And I was like, if I had only left it, like it would have been a better ride.
Great experience.
Better experience.
For the horse as well. And,
Right.
I think the thing is that like, don't practice it until you get it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right.
So that's a little bit. That's a little bit what you were tempting fate, or you were excited, or whatever. I mean, I've been there too. But you cause yourself problems, and you cause anxiety in the horse. If he does the first time you attempt it, it's great. Put the horse away. Pat yourself. Pat the horse, and just because there's many days. We get into trouble as horse trainers because we know that we're ambitious and we want to get it, and we want to make sure that no matter when I ask, I can put the horse down, I can pick the horse up. But when you're working on stuff, I try to hold myself to this rule, like, and especially now in the winter, it's like, well, what is the point? We're gonna ride tomorrow. It'll be the same, and whatever. So I think, don't work yourself. I mean, we're not sweating up here, but don't work yourself into a sweat and the horse into a anxiety riddled mess because you wanted 2 lines of ones. Set your bar high, but don't get crazy about it, right?
Mm-mm. Yeah, don't get greedy.
Totally.
Be okay with, I came out to work on this, or 1 flying change each way, right? You come out and you get 1 flying change. Sometimes leave it alone, do something else, or go on a hack, or pet the horse and call it a day. So I love it. I think there's some level of maturity, and we're all saying we have not had that level of maturity. But there is some level of saying, I can leave this horse today. He was really good. And I think that's important. And I love it. And Megan, thank you so much. How can our listeners find you online for more tips?
You can find me on Facebook. Look up Megan McIsaac or Lindenhof. You can check out my new website at lindenhof.com, and it's spelled LINDINHOF. Or feel free to give me a call or text me, 608-445-8531. Thank you so much for having me on. I really enjoy it.
We always love when you come on, Megan. Have a great night.
You too.
Well, as always, we love email and Facebook shout outs. Keep them coming. We also still have a book club book going, Arena Tracks by Christian Bayer. Don't forget, we're going to be wrapping that up pretty soon. That has some really good movements. If you're kind of getting bored of being in the ring at the end of winter, these are some great movements and exercises that you can do.
Pull out some trot poles,
Yes, pull out some trot poles. Do it. We're doing that in Florida too. So you can pull out some trot balls. It'll be super fun. Well, as always, the United States Dressage Federation is your connection to dressage education, competition, and achievement. Visit USDF.org for more information. That's www.usdf.org, the online destination for dressage. You can find our show notes and links to today's guests on our website, dressageradio.com. Like us on Facebook, just search Dressage Radio Show. Follow us on Twitter at Horse Radio. My website is maplecrestfarmky.com, and my email is reese@horseradionetwork.com.
I think the best way to find me is probably through Facebook, or my email is philip@horseradionetwork.com. I'd like to thank our sponsors for allowing us to put on a show. That's Kentucky Performance Products. If you'd like to support our show and the Horse Radio Network, you can do that through the auditor program found at horseradionetwork.com.
Everybody, keep your heels down and your shoulders back, and we will chat with you next week.